What's good? Today's release day. I am proud to announce that High Stakes at the Bonesaw Saloon, my 14th novel and third Western horror, in case you haven't seen it on social media for me already, has officially been released. So here I am doing my live. I'm not a big guy when it comes to book launches. I'm not big on them, but this is the closest thing I usually do when it comes to book launches. So you bear with me for 1 second. That's my TV. Got some Western music playing. Not sure if you can hear it. I don't want it too loud because then you can't hear me. We got some Western music playing. I am also going to go. I am live right now on YouTube on my YouTube channel, Plasmatic Writer TV. I am also live on my Facebook channel, on my Facebook page. I'm also about to go live for the first time ever on TikTok. That's assuming I can go live on TikTok. So let's find out, shall we? And now I am officially live on TikTok for the first time ever. All right. Once again, this is the launch party, if you will, for High Stakes at the Bonesaw Saloon. So I'm going to be doing my best to go vice versa. But yeah, here we go. TikTok is notifying people that I'm going live. Good luck with that, TikTok. Thank you. All right. So why am I on live randomly on a Friday? It's not totally random. I usually go live on Fridays. We know this. I am going live, of course, because of this puppy right here. High Stakes at the Bonesaw Saloon. Book number 14 for me. If you had told me 15 years ago that I was going to write my 14th book, I'd have called you crazy. But here we are, right? I will be reading from it in a little bit, assuming I can get some people. Otherwise, I'm going to be talking to myself, which I'm used to at this point. Pretty much used to talking to myself on these things. All right. First things first. High Stakes at the Bonesaw Saloon. What inspired me to write it? Well, that's a little tricky. That's a tricky question because first time I go live on TikTok, and I'm already getting a request for someone to join as a guest. Don't know who they are either, so ain't gonna be no guests up in here. You need high clearance for that. All right. What inspired me to write? Hold on, TikTok's doing some weird things. No idea. I have no idea what's going on TikTok. Crazy. Okay. So what inspired me to write High Stakes at the Bonesaw Saloon? All right. Well, I first came up with the idea because I had just written Brimstone Express. And basically, I was itching to write another Western horror. And I knew that while I wanted to write another Western horror, I didn't necessarily want to do it right away, but in the future. I have a set list of books that I plan on writing, and another Western horror was not on it. So that was an idea, right? I had written Brimstone Express. Nightshade Station, my psychological thriller, was next on the list. While I was writing uh, Nightshade Station, the itch to write another Western horror came to mind, and I kind of sort of thought maybe I should make a sequel to Brimstone Express, but no, I don't want to do that. For some reason, I just didn't like the idea of a sequel to Brimstone Express, because how could you possibly make a sequel to that? You know, there are ways, but I just wasn't really feeling it. So I decided to make it take place in the same universe as Brimstone Express. So if you need clarification, High Stakes at the Bonesaw Saloon is a standalone book, but it takes place in the same universe, in the same town as Brimstone Express. So how did I get inspired to write it? Like I said, besides looking to, write another Western horror, I needed a story. If I really wanted to write another Western horror, a storyline's going to have to present itself to me so that I'm, gearing to go to write it. That didn't really come to me like it usually does. It kind of came in bits and pieces. I had watched one TV show, I had seen another, I had watched a movie, I had seen a documentary, and basically what happened was I got these little bits of ideas. But then I came across the idea of a poker game. I think I had actually watched an episode of Beyond Belief, Fact or Fiction, and there was this weird story about a poker game. And also, there was an episode of Night Gallery, the sister show and the later show that Rod Serling hosted. And both of them, I think, they were both Westerns, and they both had to do with poker. So, maybe not even taking the supernatural element out of the two of them, I took the poker element out of them. I said, I want to make my Western horror about poker this time. Brimstone Express was about train robbery. This one's going to be about poker, because God knows cowboys and outlaws love to play them some poker during the Wild West. Excuse me. TikTok's going crazy over here, telling me to invite people I don't even know. There could be people watching on the outside, not even coming in. Like, who the hell is this dude? Why does he look funny? That's just how I look. Back to my inspiration. So I wanted to write a poker game. I wanted to write a Western horror about a poker game. So, okay, what am I going to call it? Well, the first thing that I decided on was I wanted it to take place in the same place as Brimstone Express. Only I wanted it to take place in the town of Bloodwater on a more permanent basis. The entire book takes place in Bloodwater, Arizona, fictional town that I created, which is, of course, the town of Brimstone Express as well. Also, man, sorry, I just ate, so acid reflux. I'm gonna have to get another soda soon. All right. So I wanted it to take place in the same spot as the same saloon in Brimstone Express, which is the Bonesaw Saloon. So I was like, okay, the Bonesaw Saloon, that's gonna work. But what can I call it leading up to the Bonesaw Saloon? Again, I get weird inspiration, right? I told you I got inspiration from a random episode of Beyond Belief, Fact or Fiction. How many people even remember that show? It's still on. It's on Amazon Prime. Night Gallery, anybody? Yeah, so I'm about to name drop another one, right? Has anyone ever heard of the movie Bad Times at the El Royale with Dakota Johnson and Luke Hemsworth? It bombed at the box office, but I'd seen it once, and I was like, you know what, this movie's kind of badass. I like it. So I like the title, right? Bad Times at the El Royale. So I was like, okay, something at the Bone Saw Saloon. So I was like, Bad Times at the Bone Saw Saloon? That doesn't sound too bad. But I was like, yeah, that's kind of ripping off Bad Times at the El Royale. I don't want to do that. So I got to brainstorming, and I was like, well, wait a minute, what do they do in poker? There's high stakes in poker. High, high stakes at the Bone Saw. Yep, just came to me one day, and then boom. High Stakes at the Bone Saw Saloon was born. There is one thing I will spoil a few little. I will spoil little tidbits because it's not really spoiling anything, right? Excuse me a second. Okay. All right. So now that you know what inspired it, who are the characters inside of it, Justin? Well, I'm about to tell you. Grab a cream soda or a sarsaparilla. Grab yourself a beer, and I will tell you. Um, The main character in High Stakes at the Bone Saw Saloon is a woman. Is a woman. This is a first for me. Yes, this is the first book out of 14 that I've written. Well, not if you don't count my poetry books, but this is the first book I've written in which a woman is the main character. Was this intentional? Yes, because I had realized that to this point I'd never made a woman a main character. And also, I thought it would be a nice, delightful change, given the fact that it's a Western horror. So I kind of wanted to take those Annie Oakleys, those Calamity Janes, if you will, and kind of just toss them aside and just say, you know what? I want to create my own badass female lead. And I did. And Lavinia Laramie was born. Now, it is a catchy name, Lavinia Laramie. The reason I gave her this name was because, one, her last name came before her first name. Laramie is a name that I used for I I think I was playing a football game and I titled the character Laramie. It sounds very Western, right? And I had come across somebody who had stated it's good to name a main character. It's good to give a main character an alliterative name so that way it's memorable. So I had also remembered that uh, the guy who created Superman came up with Lex Luthor. So I was like, well, let me do the double L. How about that? So, so yeah, between wanting to be alliterative and remembering that I had already named my character's last name Laramie and wanting to go with like LL, like Lex Luthor, I decided, okay, what can I name her? Laura, it's a little generic. And once again, random inspiration. Twilight Zone. The Twilight Zone is no stranger to inspiration for me. I watch the show daily, right? How old are you, Justin? I grew up on the Twilight Zone, believe me. Thanks to my mom. But there's one episode called The Passersby. I had never, for years, my mom and I had never watched this episode. Never came across it, right? And after a while, saw it all the time, right? The main character in this episode her name is Lavinia. Subconsciously, I feel like I came across this in my head, and I was like, "Wait a minute! I probably got that from the episode." So sure enough, Lavinia Laramie was born. She would be the main character of High Stakes at the Bone Saw Saloon. Now, I love how it's telling me to invite all these random ass people that I don't know to join. I think that's from there. Okay. The villain. The villains. The main villain is a man by the name of Alistair Reardon. What made you come up with that name, Justin? Well, Alistair, I think I got from the wrestler Alistair Black. It's just Alistair's just a sinister name. Also, you know what? Shout out to author Alistair Cross. I think he was also on my mind when I came up with that idea to use his name as a main character, as a villain. Drayden, I think I had Drayden written down somewhere, and I decided to pair it up, and I looked at it a few times. I'm one of those weird people that'll look at a name and piece them together and be like, yeah, I know what that looks good. Alistair Drayden. Now, Lavinia Laramie is loosely, and when I say loosely, I mean loosely, based on Big Nose Kate, who was the wife or girlfriend of Doc Holliday. I say loosely because I don't know jack squat on Big Nose Kate. I just know that she owned her own saloon. So that and maybe some of her mannerisms, not her mannerisms because you can't. Some of her expressions in the book can be loosely based off of Big Nose Kate. Alistair Drayden is based off of Clint Eastwood. If Clint Eastwood were evil in any of his westerns. Because Clint Eastwood is kind of either good or he's neutral. Very rarely has he ever been a villain, like straight up. So, knowing this, creating this idea that Alistair Drayden is pretty much Clint Eastwood, but evil, then made me talk like Clint Eastwood anytime Alistair Drayden had dialogue. So when I'm writing this book and I have dialogue for Alistair Drayden, I would just read it like, well, this is my gun. It's called the Dark Specimen. Constantly. That I could not read it unless it was in the voice of Clint Eastwood. So, I thought that was kind of funny. Drayden's gang, not without honorable mention. First up, we have Sterling Hosford. Couldn't tell you where I got his name. Just kind of put two names together, right? Sterling Hosford is, well, first of all, let's back up. Lavinia Laramie, she owns a saloon. Not too many women back in the day can say that they own a saloon, except for maybe Big Nose Kate, right? Lavinia Laramie is like 20, I believe she's 24 years old. She's very kind, but she has her deal of rowdy scoundrels that she has to deal with, right? She's got a lot of rowdy scoundrels she's got to deal with, right? So she's got a little bit of a backbone. But that backbone grows, and then she really has to use it when Drayden and his gang not only come into Bloodwater, but make her saloon their domain, the place where they will be playing poker. And as you can imagine, Lavinia already doesn't really take kindly to strangers and outlaws. Who did back in the Wild West, right? But basically, Lavinia doesn't put up with anyone's crap. She's very, very strong, very strong-willed, very forceful. So yeah, Alistair Drayden, cutthroat, murderous, cold, calm and collective, but in a very dark and disturbing way. Not the type of guy you want to piss off, to put it lightly. That's putting it lightly. Sterling Hosford, we don't really get to, I'll be straight up, a little bit of a spoiler. You don't get too much of him, but you get a nice little dose of him. The problem with Sterling Hosford is his mouth gets him into trouble. There are several occasions in which this is clearly obvious. So, that's one of the interesting traits of him. Then, of course, we have Elijah Cutter. Elijah Cutter is similar to Eros Boone, from Brimstone Express, except he's a little more polished, if you will. He's a little more composed. If you read Brimstone Express, you'll know what I mean. Arrow Spoon is off the freaking wall. Cutter's sort of like that. He's kind of raw. He's kind of unorthodox, but he's organized. And this is because he is a former Civil War soldier. It is worth noting High Stakes of the Bonesaw Saloon takes place in 1867, 2 years after the Civil War has ended. Elijah Cutter is a former soldier. And this comes up in conversation, and real battlegrounds, real squadrons, and real people are mentioned. So, because that's me blending history with horror, because that's what I do, right? That's what I do. So Elijah Cutter, very unpredictable, but also very polished. I think polished is the good word to use here, right? Next on the gang list is, let's see, I'm drawing a blank, holy crap. Let's see, we got Alistair Drayden, Elijah Cutter, Sterling Hosford, Tiber Locke. Yes, I said Tiber, Tyber, not to be confused with Tyler. This is also referenced in the book because of this particular reason, in case the reader just thinks that I made typo after typo. Tiber Locke's interesting fact about him is the fact that he will tell you, he will remind the reader and everybody that will hear it in the book that he is part Native American. This is his little quirk. He does it so much that Drayden, at one point, says, Tiber, we've heard this story all over, all the time. Nobody cares. And Tiber Locke just kind of shrivels up and shrinks goes into his own little corner, and he shuts up until the next time an opportunity presents itself. And there's a few. I'll spoil a little bit, but just enough. There are at least several opportunities in occasions in this book where Tiber Locke will be like, hey, guys, remember, I'm Native American. And they'll just be like, this again. So that is his gang. And also, finally, last but certainly not least is Colton Slade. Colton Slade is the quietest out of Drayden's gang because we don't know much about him. He's very calm. He's very quiet. But he's vocal when he needs to be. Let's put it that way. If there's an argument, he adds his 2 cents. If there's a duel going outside, he'll stand guard if he needs to. So Colton Slade is a very mysterious character. So that's Alistair Drayden's gang. And then, of course, we have the infamous Mr. Barda, as he is known and likes to be known. Mr. Barda is a friend of Alistair Drayden, and like Drayden, he is one bloodthirsty SOB. Let's put it that way, right? Like Cutter, he served in the war, and this shows. I think having served in the war really shows my characters kind of like humanity, if you will. I mean, they're bloodthirsty outlaws at the end of the day, but because they served in the war, there's that kind of like solace, that little bit of humanity that kind of makes them just not want to go completely off the rails. So Mr. Barda, very mysterious, but he'll tell you like it is if you call him out or try to call him out. Good luck to you on that one. And he and Drayden will get into duels throughout the book. A little spoiler for you, but not really spoiling anything. So that's Drayden's gang. That's Mr. Barda. Now we have some smaller characters. First, let's start with the sheriff. Hello, the sheriff. In any Western movie or Western TV show that you watch, what is usually the case? There's usually always a corrupt sheriff. Well, I took that and I ran with it. Like, I beat the whole crooked sheriff trope. Like, beat it like a dead horse, let's put it that way. The sheriff's name is Percy Crowder. His name is very meaningful. Percy, that I got from the character of Percy from the Green Mile by Stephen King, played by Doug Hutchinson in the movie. Percy's a little bit of a weasel. And then Crowder, from Boyd Crowder, from the show Justified, or Writing the Rap by Elmore Leonard. The character in the TV show is played by Walter Goggins. So I put them both together, and you get Percy Crowder. And Percy Crowder is one of the most corrupt, weaselly, slimy, snake like characters you will ever come across. If you don't hate him from the first two things of dialogue that I give him, then I guess you must be rooting for Weasley slimy dirtbag sheriffs. Uh, but yeah, he's very much like he's very easy to connive. Let's put it that way. And also, another little tidbit spoiler: him and Lavinia, if you haven't guessed it, they don't get along. And why would they, right? Lavinia is very stern. Like, I run my establishment very well. And meanwhile, the sheriff, who's supposed to uphold the law, is like, no, I'm just going to let all these people slide into your saloon because they ain't causing a problem. I made him sound, and also remember when I said that I made Clint Eastwood, um, I gave, I made Alistair Drayton sound like Clint Eastwood. Well, I also made Percy Crowder sound very, very Southern-like. Again, I'm gonna read from A Bloody Blind. I'm gonna read from High Stakes, and you'll know what I'm talking about. Two more characters. I know there's a lot of characters in this book, right? Next, we have Scarlet Breckenridge. And Miss Scarlet Breckenridge is very proper, but she also happens to be the madam of the Viper's Vein saloon that is right across the street from the Bonesaw Saloon. Do her and Lavinia get along? No, they sure don't. And I have her talk very proper too. And again, in my best Southern Belle voice, again when I'm doing dialogue as Scarlet, that comes out too. So you might get a kick out of it if when I read it in a little bit. Last but not least is Marshall Micah Dempsey. We don't see too much of him. We see him at the beginning of the book and we see him at the end of the book. And he's talked about in the middle. Spoiler alert. So sorry. Lucky this is an actual, like, well, this is an informative video, but. And we're back. I apologize to back. And you're like, what the hell happened? My tablet. Oh, yeah. I don't know if it's even. It's lagging. Oh, man. Okay. Yeah, all right. I'm totally testing this now. Jesus. Uh, okay. I believe I left off with Marshal Micah Dempsey. And he is named after Micah Torrance from The Rifleman. You know, the show back in the day, the Western with Chuck Connors as the Rifleman. Well, Micah Torrance was the Marshal, played by the late actor Paul Fix. This is lagging. It's annoying me, but there's nothing I can do. So, uh, no, I'm not. It's a bunch of people requesting the co-host. Freaking weird. Like, I don't know you people. All right. So, Justin, what is the book about? And tell us about. What's going on? All right. Let me tell you about where it takes place. Obviously, you know the Bone Saw Saloon is owned by Lavinia Laramie. It takes place in the city of Bloodwater, Arizona. Why is it called Bloodwater? Well, I would say I've full disclosure, I've been saying read the book to find out, which is kind of my way of saying like, hey, it's very action packed. But if you really want the true meaning of why it's called Bloodwater, you're gonna have to read Brimstone Express. I don't get into that on this one. Six outlaws gather around the felt, their souls on the line. In this poker pit of horrors, who will gamble their life away, and who walks away unscathed? Lavinia Laramie is the owner of the Bonesaw Saloon. She runs the establishment well and doesn't put up with rowdy scoundrels. But when a notorious gang of outlaws ride into town, they make her place of business their playing ground and frighten off all her regulars. Corrupt sheriff, Lavinia decides to take matters into her own hands. She tells the men they can keep playing poker, but now she makes the rules. Instead of just playing for money, they are playing for their lives, and there can only be one winner. That's on the back. The cover. Who designed the cover? Was it my cover artist? No. It was me. I made this cover. Awesome, right? The fun things that Canva will do for you. Once again, this book, like all my others, like the two before it, Nightshade Station and Brimstone Express, and any book after, is dedicated to my mom, who could definitely have held her own in the Wild West era. She really could have. The quotes. The hardest tumble a man can take is to fall over his own bluff. Ambrose Bierce. Leave me alone and let me go to hell by my own route. Calamity Jane. It's what people know about themselves inside that makes them afraid. Clint Eastwood and High Plains Drifter. I'm going to read from chapter 2. Just because chapter 1's a bit of a one-on-one, sort of. I'm going to shut the music off just a little bit so I can concentrate on reading. Ooh, excuse me. All right. Chapter 2, A Town Run Amok. A bottle flies through the Bonesaw Saloon before it hits the wall, shattering in pieces. All right, that's enough. If you men have issues with one another, take it outside the saloon, because you sure as hell aren't fighting in here, Owen says. The two men mumbled something under their breath before getting up from their seats and walking out of the saloon to settle their quarrel. After they leave, a farmer wearing dirty overalls and a dirty white undershirt walks into the saloon. He walks angrily towards the bar before sitting down. Is a marshal around? He asks the woman. Sorry, Irv, but Marshal Micah is out of town. On business, the woman replies, polishing a glass. The man lets out a long, exasperated sigh and puts his finger between the bridge of his nose before he speaks again. Pour me a whiskey. Everyone in the saloon stops talking and stops what they're doing to look at Irv. The woman almost dropped her glass in shock as she looked at him. What did you just say? I said, pour me a goddamn whiskey, Lavinia. Everyone in the saloon remained silent, staring at Irv in shock as Lavinia replies to him. Irv, you don't drink. You're one of the hardest working men in the world, and you've never touched a drop of alcohol in your life. What could possibly be so bad that you want to drink now? 2 words. Percy Crab. That good Weasley cocksucker we call a sheriff. I've had it up to here with him, Lavinia. Irv says, slamming his fist down onto the hardwood wooden surface. The crowd in the saloon listened to what Irv had to say, while some of them went back to drinking and talking amongst themselves. I should have known. What's that corrupt, no-brain yellow belly done now? Lavinia asks. It's what he didn't do. I woke up in the middle of the night to my horses making a bunch of noise, and I went outside with my shotgun. By the time I got out there, I saw horse thieves riding out with all my horses. I couldn't get a good shot because they all got off my land, guns blazing. I told the sheriff what happened, and you know what he said? I'm almost afraid to know, Irv. He said, well, sometimes these things happen, and there ain't nothing we can do about it. I said, I'm telling you what we can do. We can do something about it. But all he said after that was, well, they're probably clearing the next county by now. Nothing I can do, Irv says. I'm sorry, Irv, Lavinia says, placing her hand on his. That's why I asked if Marshal Dempsey was around. He's more of a goddamn sheriff than Crowder. Remind me how the fuck he became sheriff? Well, I reckon there's 2 reasons. One, the sympathetic story of him supposedly getting kidnapped by Indians, even though he's the only one that can confirm that. And 2, he told this town what they wanted to hear. And half of them believed him. And look at us now. Crime's on up, and the sheriff does nothing about it. Not a goddamn thing. Surely we can go ahead and make someone else sheriff. Hell, Marshal Dempsey practically is. Why don't we get together and do something about it? Irv grows silent. What's the matter with all of you? We have rights. Many of the men in the saloon speak up. It's not that easy, Irv. If we were, we would have run him out by now. He's doing a great job. Irv looks at the last man and glares at him. Oh yeah? What makes him so great, huh? He said he was going to clean up this town and rid it of bandits. We've had 3 times more bandits and wanted men last 3 months. You call that great? Well, none of them are here now, the man said. Yeah, because he paid off or promised them something in exchange for not driving this town into the fucking mud. He's a great man, Sheriff, and I won't have you talk to him like that, the man says, ready to draw his gun. Also, TikTok, don't ban me. I apologize. My book has swears. Do you look the other way? He's a great man and a great sheriff, and I won't have you talk about him like that, the man says, ready to draw his gun. All right, that's enough, Larry. If you even think about drawing that goddamn gun, you Best believe I have it in my right to blow your head clean off your shoulders for shooting an unarmed man in my saloon. Now you get out of here. Larry reversed his glaring stare at Irv to Lavinia before spitting on the floor. Fine. I know when I'm not wanted. I'll just mosey along to the Viper's vein. Scarlet's beer is better anyway. Out! Larry walks out of the Bone Saw Saloon and walks across the way over to the Viper's vein, the rival saloon which also serves as a hotel brothel. Everyone goes back to talking and drinking the Bone Saw as Irv sits at the bar in front of Lavinia, upset. I'm sorry, Irv. When the marshal gets back, he can resolve this for you. Will you be able to get my horses back? Will you finally put that sheriff in his place? I wonder. I was a fool to think anyone could help me, let alone Sheriff Crowder. I'm just a lonely old farmer with plenty of ground to yeah. I'm just a lonely old farmer with plenty of ground to stand on. But I guess that doesn't mean much these days. Did you still want that drink? Lavinia asked, trying to lighten the mood. Irv gets off his bar stool and saunters out of the saloon. Lavinia sighs before pouring more beer for her incoming customers. Lavinia Laramie is 26. Oh, I thought she was. Look at that. 26, not 24. 26 years old, she stands about 5'6", with long brown hair and blue eyes, and isn't the kind of woman to upset or anger. She started working in the saloon at 19 as a dishwasher and server for her aunt who owned it. When her aunt took ill and passed away 3 years later, Lavinia took over as owner. Her father, Dixon Laramie, was a former sheriff for 10 years and died in the Battle of Glorieta Pass in March 1962. Lavinia's mother still lives in town and worries about her daughter's safety while running the saloon. The Bone Saw Saloon is one of the oldest establishments in the city of Bloodwater. On the outside is a beautifully crafted sign right above the entrance, with a name etched in wood that still looks freshly made despite being 15 years old. The regular doors are open all the way and are up against the wall on either side, with the bat wing swinging doors prominent, with a B and S on each door. The interior of the saloon has over a dozen tables scattered throughout, neatly and in an organized manner, along with some bar stools counter. On the left side of the saloon are pictures featuring a whiskey bottle, a tobacco, and landscape paintings of the countryside. The right has the pictures of a painting of the desert and a portrait of a gunfighter. On the wall behind the bar are two shelves full of whiskey bottles and the other bottles of liquor sitting on opposite sides. In between them are wanted posters of some of the most wanted men in the country and a picture of Lavinia's father as sheriff standing by his deputy Benjamin Barnes, Micah Dempsey, and the former marshal. Hanging high above them and fastened to the wall is a giant bone saw, and above that, secured to a wooden beam, is a giant intimidating bull skull. In the left corner of the saloon, past the bar, is a wooden chair. On the wall is a dartboard where men can come to play a friendly game. There's a picture of Lavinia's late aunt, Laura May, on the far part of the wall, going toward the back of the bar. Despite the rugged people it kept, the Bone Saw Saloon was a tidy place to be. Most of the time, that is. Outside the saloon, 5 men on horses have ridden into town. The men are Tiber Locke, a man who believes himself to be half Native American; Sterling Hosford, who doesn't know when to shut up; Elijah Cutter, a former loose cannon Confederate soldier; Colton Slade, a quiet young gun looking to make a name for himself. And then there's the leader of the group, Alistair Drayden, a cold-hearted and lets his gun do the talking. A man so void of emotion he'd kill just about anyone for no reason at all. I'll read a couple more pages. The people walking along the road in town take one look at the men and nearly all but a few run inside, fearing for their lives as they lock their doors and let down their blinds and curtains. Drayden rides further into town, as the others follow suit. He stops when a red-haired man is staggering on the dirt road. He stops and turns around and waves while smiling. Drayden looks at him unamused. The man turns back and keeps walking ahead before falling to his knees, clearly drunk and disoriented. Drayden rides further and makes one of his horse's hoofs nudge the man. What do you think you're doing, huh? Trying to walk here, the man says. He gets back up but falls back down repeatedly. Drayden rides up to him and has his horse nudge him with one of his hoofs, but this time repeatedly. Hey, stop it. What do you think you're doing? Huh? You got a problem? All right, we'll settle this right then, the man says, staggering back up as he stands as he walks up to Drayden. I'm gonna go down there. 10 paces from you. You get off your horse and we'll settle this. Got it? The man asked. Drayden says nothing and simply nods in approval of the man's request. The man does his best to walk 10 paces, staggering and wobbling along the way, but keeps standing as he reaches his spot. Drayden gets off his horse and slowly walks to his spot just as the man turns around. Drayden stands there motionless, and the man across from him, at 10 paces, does his best to stand there motionless, but is still slightly wobbling. He puts his hand at his side, getting ready to draw, but Drayden keeps his hands straight down at his sides, not in ready to draw fashion like his opponent. After 10 seconds pass, the man goes to draw his gun, but just as he does, in the blink of a second, Drayden is faster and draws his long-barreled black revolver from its holster and fires them at the man. Before he can get his gun fully out of its holster, his shoulder is struck by Drayden's bullet, which pierces through it, making a sound as if an arrow had struck it, and does far bigger damage than it should have, as the man's arm falls clear off his body, as though it were perfectly cut. Ah, what the fuck? The man said before falling backward. His face became gaunt white, and he began shaking before going into shock with the hole that was once his arm, profusely leaking blood. Drayden fires his gun again and shoots the other arm off. The man remains standing but wobbles there, staring off into space with no arms, as the holes continue to gush blood. The man falls over and goes fully into shock, and he dies right there in the dirt road in the middle of town from blood loss. Drayden's men and a few townspeople that remain outside look on in disbelief at what they just witnessed. Drayden's mouth forms a slight smirk as he takes out a cigarette from his pocket and gets a match from his other pocket. He runs the matchstick along the long barrel of his gun to light it, and then puts it to his cigarette, and then puts it to his mouth. With his gun still in hand and his cigarette in his mouth, he strolls over to the man's lifeless body and points it down at him. Soon a green mist emits from the dead man's body as it slowly slithers and curves its way into the muzzle of the gun. Drayden, now satisfied, forms a more defined smirk, while the cigarette sits perched in his mouth as it rolls to the left side. He puts the gun back in its holster and looks into town to see everyone has cleared the road, and the only people outside are him and his gang. He turns around and walks back over to his horse and gets on it and rides over to his men. And I'll leave it at that. That was a small little reading from Chapter 2, The Town Run Amok, from High Stakes at the Bonesaw Saloon. Now has come the time where I try to sell you the book, right? Like a sneaky snake oil salesman that you see in Westerns, right? I'm proud of this book. Took me 6 or 7 months to write. It's my third Western horror. Why do I like writing Western horror? Well, to put it lightly, I enjoy Westerns. I love writing horror. They're two of my favorite topics. So I just kind of put them together and enjoy writing about two things. What's better than writing about two things that you enjoy, right? Also, if you can make Westerns are already badass to me. But if you can make them just a little bit more badass by adding horror, can't go wrong, right? High Stakes of the Bonesaw Saloon is available now on Amazon for Kindle and for paperback. I do hope you will pick up a copy. If you do, please let me know. Be nice to, And if you do enjoy the book, please leave a review on Amazon and Goodreads. This has been a celebration for the release of High Stakes at the Bonesaw Saloon. Until next time.